Good morning. Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West on this very special day as we celebrate a very special occasion, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Welcome to one and all, whether you are a longtime member of our spiritual community or visiting us for the very first time. I'm the Reverend Suzelle Lynch. We call ourselves together now with these words adapted from something written by my colleague, the Reverend Marge Kipe. As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong to one another. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves at home under the stars, here on this good earth. Here we remember we are linked with each other and interconnected, interdependent with all that lives. Come, let us worship together and let us celebrate. I'd like to introduce to you the team that's here with us this morning. We have Dave Cicero, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and two very special guests, UUCW members, Jim Fischer and Rob Zimmerman. Both Rob and Jim have years of experience working in the sector of the global economy that deals with water. Jim works for a division of Xylem Corporation involved with equipment for water and wastewater treatment, and Rob is the recently retired sustainability leader for Kohler. Jim and Rob are here to share their perspectives on our human interdependence with the natural world. I also want to introduce our special musical guest, guitarist Andrew Fischer, who grew up at Unitarian Universalist Church West, and also to note that Jennifer Nicolosi, our lead music director, provided the recorded music that you'll hear today. And Kelly Bognar, our publications coordinator, is, as always, behind the scenes managing the technology that makes today's service possible. It is very good to have such a great team here to lead the service this morning.
And this morning, good morning, as we celebrate this month of being a people of liberation, I invite you to join with me with the chalice lighting reading that was included in the order of service sent out previously. If you have your own home chalice, then I'll invite you to light it as well. I'll light mine when I complete the reading with you today. Liberation means releasing ourselves from outgrown habits of mind and heart. It means upholding the voice and vote of citizenship, affirming freedom of belief and expression, and answering the call of justice. Because we know that none of us are truly free until all of us are free. May the light of this chalice inspire us and urge us toward greater love and greater liberation.
And now, please join us in singing hymn number 1064. If you don't have a hymnal, the words are printed in the order of service if you happen to download the order of service. Otherwise, feel free to just listen, but if you know the words, feel free to chime right in. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from a rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I fly the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, breathe the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Thank you, Jim and Andrew. That was great. Many of us hold that as one of our favorite hymns, I think, in the canon. Well, as Reverend Suzelle mentioned, this year, Earth Day turns 50. Earth Day is a holiday that Unitarian Universalists can really embrace and celebrate. After all, it affirms the wisdom of our seventh principle, that all life is interconnected, and that we really need to care for our planet Earth. Gaylord Nelson was a Wisconsin governor and US Senator who came up with the idea for the very first Earth Day back in 1969. This video, made by PBS Wisconsin Education, tells the story.
You hear the word ecology. That's a big science, not a narrow one. It's a big concept. And it is concerned with all the ramifications of all the relationships of all living creatures to each other and their environment.
This is me with my father. My name is Tia Nelson, and my dad was Gaylord Nelson. He is known as the father of Earth Day, a vision he had for teachers all across the country to talk about the environment. Maybe you've heard of Earth Day. Maybe you've even participated in an Earth Day event. Before he was the father of Earth Day, before he was my dad, he was a little boy growing up in Clear Lake in northern Wisconsin. He loved spending time outdoors, exploring the forests, lakes, and streams of the region. Nature was his playground. As he was growing up, he also got to know the world of civics and government through his parents.
And so I went to political meetings with my father and my mother from the time I was in grade school. And whenever a speaker came within driving distance in our Model T Ford, the way we went, 40, 50, 60 miles sometimes, just to hear somebody, hear one of the La Follettes give a speech.
My father was inspired, and he started thinking about a future for himself, running for elected office. That stayed with him as he went to college and then law school, through his time in the U.S. Army during World War II. When he came back to Wisconsin, he was ready to get his career in politics going. He ran for the state senate and then for governor of Wisconsin. As governor, he worked on government reform, social justice causes, and environmental issues. He created new jobs for young people, designated lands for public parks, and worked to conserve our beautiful lakes and rivers. He accomplished a lot for the people of Wisconsin, and he wanted to make an even bigger impact. So he ran for the U.S. Senate to represent Wisconsin citizens in the nation's capital. And he won. But when he got to Washington, D.C., he found out that others in government just didn't seem to care about the environment as much as he did. A national conservation tour with President Kennedy didn't accomplish what he hoped it would. And few senators would support the laws that he proposed to protect our environment. Some years later, he went to visit the site of an oil spill and was devastated by the damage he saw. On the plane ride home, he read an article about anti-war teach-ins on college campuses. That's when he got an idea.
Teach-ins on the campuses, teach-ins on the Vietnam War. I thought, that's a good idea. Why can't we have a nationwide, quote, teach-in on the environment? That's where the concept of Earth Day came from.
The idea for a teach-in about the environment started to spread well beyond my dad's original vision. And when the day came, April 22nd, 1970, people all over the country participated. That day, the first Earth Day, marked the start of many changes to come over the next 10 years. They passed laws to keep pollution out of the air and water, so many laws that it became known as the Environmental Decade. My father was elected to 3 terms, serving 18 years in the U.S. Senate. Even after he was finished, he never stopped fighting for the environment. When asked at the age of 88 why he still went to work every day, he said, because the job's not done. And he's right. There's still so much more to do.
I don't think there's any other issue viewed in its broadest sense, which is critical to mankind, as the issue of the quality of the environment in which we live.
Earth Day lives on, as does the need to protect and care for the place we call home. Each of us has the power to help make the world a better place. It's up to you and me to do our part.
You know, what impresses me about Earth Day is that it was not started as a pre-planned event, a pre-packaged thing, organized from the top down. It was a proposal, an idea that local groups of people understood as good and right. And those people took the idea, shaped it to be most meaningful to their own circumstances, and shared it with others in their communities. And that's how it spread. This is how the celebration of Earth Day, the awareness of the importance of caring for our environment, spread throughout the world, really, in small steps, nurtured by caring, committed people. They have taught and continue to teach others to conserve energy, to clean up our air, our land, and our water, to reuse and recycle items as much as possible, to find less harmful ways of living on our planet. Many of us have our own stories of things that we've done with people we know, our friends and family, to help out this cause over the years. And we will continue to do that. So finally, I ask you, how will you carry on Gaylord Nelson's legacy?
Thank you, Dave. How will we carry on Gaylord Nelson's legacy? I invite you to think about that now as we enter our time of meditation, which comes from words from the poem The Peace of Wild Things from Wendell Berry, combined with Rest in the Grace of the World by Martha Munson. Our meditation will be accompanied by beautiful images, photographs taken by Eddie Daniel, and music performed by Jennifer Nicolosi. The Spirit of Life, the song by Carolyn McDade. So please come with me now into this time of meditation. despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be. I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, where the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. In this time of meditation, may you rest in the grace of the world and be free. If you're feeling weak, may you sense the strength of the eternal hills and rest in the grace of the world. If failure is haunting you, may you be held with a lift like the buoyancy of water and rest in the grace of the world. If limitation dogs your steps and slows your mind, may you remember the choices you have to open your heart to the sights and scents, textures, sounds, and tastes all around you in this moment. Those choices are as wide as the expansive sky. May you rest in the grace of the world. If you are feeling insecurity, place your feet on the solid earth and rest in the grace of the world. If you're feeling despair, may you listen for the morning songs of birds and rest in the grace of the world. If you feel fearful, may the sun's warmth on your skin remind you that there is still goodness in this world. May you rest in the grace of that goodness. And if you are feeling calm and centered, if you feel like celebrating, may you rest in the grace of the goodness of your feelings, the goodness of the world, and share that blessing with others. For a time now, without words, we rest in the grace of the world, and we are free. Shalom, blessed be, Ashe, and Amen.
Thank you, Suzelle. So today's special music is a song called Water by a musician named Ken Lonnquist. Ken is a Wisconsin-based musician, and he writes wonderful music for children and adults. This song, Water, is from his album, Earthy Songs for Kids. But it's not just for kids, it's for all of us. But if you are a parent of young children, I can highly recommend get this album. It's got great songs you can sing, and they're all about earth and our appreciation for the earth. Ken's also a special friend of our church, so we've really benefited from our relationship with him over the years. With that, I'd like to kick off our song, Water, and take it away, Andrew. Oh, there's water that ripples, water that's calm, water in the coconut hanging from the palm, tidal waves and hurricanes and whirlpools, hot spring water, water cold and cool, and it's water, water. The world's got a whole lot of water, 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 water all over the world. Oh, there's water above, water below. Clouds are full of rain and ice and snow. Aquifers below us and artesian springs, bubbling up to fill your cup and make you want to sing about water, water. The world's got a whole lot of water, 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 water all over the world. There's water for fishes, water for trees, gnats and bats and grizzly bears and bumblebees. And what about the farmer planting little seeds? Every living thing upon the planet needs a little water, water. The world's got a whole lot of water, 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 water all over the world. Superior and Huron and Ontario, Michigan and Erie caught up in the flow, Atlantic and Pacific, deep and blue, and 90% of both me and you is made of water, water. The world's got a whole lot of water, 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 water all over the world. Yes, there's plenty of water in the deep blue sea, but that's not the kind good for you and me. There's precious little left good for us to drink. That's why it's high time everybody stops to think about water, water. The world's got a whole lot of water, 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 water all over the world. Falling from the sky, water all over the world. In the river running by, water all over the world. In every tear you cry, water all over the world.
So I would like to turn things over now to Rob Zimmerman and Jim. We are greatly blessed to have them both here with their expertise about the water environment, the water ecosystem of our global world. Rob?
Thank you, Suzelle, and thanks, Jim and Andrew, for your music today. We really enjoyed that. I'm going to share some of my reflections about water and environmental issues from my time professionally, and then Jim will be doing the same after I'm done. When I was young, I was a science nerd. I grew up loving the comedy and music of the 70s, but the way I saw the world was influenced by science. People such as Jacques Cousteau, Jane Goodall, Marlon Perkins, David Attenborough, and Carl Sagan, and the documentaries they narrated gave me a good lesson in the interdependent web of life and the workings of the universe, at least how I was understood then. In school, I learned about conservation, not just the environmental kind, the kind that says we should conserve land by keeping it from being developed, or conserve water or energy by using less, but conservation in the sense that chemists and physicists mean, that the universe is a zero-sum game, that neither matter nor energy is created or destroyed. It just changes form. That's a very powerful principle, one that's held true for the entirety of the universe and certainly throughout the history of life on Earth. While this principle has been understood for centuries, humans have had the luxury of being able to focus on creating products while either ignoring what happens to the byproducts or assuming nature will somehow repurpose or reabsorb them infinitely. Of course, we know that's not the case. With over 7 billion people consuming ever more resources and producing ever more waste, our civilization is out of balance with the natural world. It's not at all clear if we're going to find a path toward environmental sustainability that also provides everyone with the opportunity for a dignified life in a just society. In fact, this month's edition of National Geographic has two covers, one titled How We Saved the World and the other called How We Lost the Planet. My experience working on sustainability in the corporate world gave me an inside view on the challenges that our society faces in making a transition from business as usual to delivering a good life for everyone today and in future generations. As a Unitarian Universalist, I believe in the power of reason, scientific inquiry, and innovation to solve many of today's challenges. Many of the recommendations in Paul Hawken's book, Drawdown, which provides a roadmap to address climate change that's consistent with the Paris Climate Accord, are technologies that exist today but need to be refined and deployed at scale. Similar guides exist for sustainable management of water resources. The Alliance for Water Stewardship, which has its North American headquarters here in Milwaukee, has a standard that companies can use to help track and report their water use against what the local watershed can sustainably supply. Other ways to measure and encourage sustainable use of materials over a product's life cycle are also being developed. We know how to do this. So, given the stakes of saving the world versus losing the planet, if we know how to build a more sustainable world, why aren't we making more progress or going faster? I believe the answer lies in behavioral science and economics. One of the principles of human decision-making we've seen with the COVID-19 outbreak is that we are slow to incur short-term sacrifices to flatten the curve, especially if the long-term benefit is avoiding some uncertain bad outcome far in the future. Problems such as how to respond to pandemics and climate change fall into a field called post-normal science, a phrase that was coined by Silvio Funtowitz and Jerome Ravitz in the early 90s to describe complex systemic problems that could have many outcomes and imperfect models to guide decision-making. Business leaders, as well as political leaders, aren't well situated to act aggressively on these types of problems. Other, more tangible opportunities with less risk and easier to quantify rewards will naturally take precedent, mindshare, and available financial resources. The second barrier to progress is our economic models, in which our take, make, waste model of production and consumption is preferable to a fully sustainable model. How is it possible that the conservation economy of nature, that of zero waste, 100% reuse of materials, a model that's worked for the entire history of life on Earth, can be less profitable than our current economic model? The answer is the flawed model itself and the incomplete accounting that drives all business decisions. Economics is called the dismal science, but it's not really a science like chemistry or physics. Rather, it's a model of human decision-making. Like any model, the output is only as good as the input and algorithms it's built on. And the cost of pollution, the lost productivity, the lost quality of life that we are foisting on many people today and all those of future generations are lumped into a category called externalities. Unless they are charged as taxes, such as a carbon tax, these costs aren't factored into financial decisions today. So in essence, they are free. But whether or not we recognize them on spreadsheets or in boardrooms, these debts continue to grow. It's the ultimate theft from future generations, that of a chance for a decent quality of life. But there is good news. These insights aren't only mine, they're held by a growing number of people within companies, big and small, around the world. This sense of business being out of balance with nature, of not fully accounting for all impacts, of recognizing the damage we are doing, and of the opportunity to change the world for the better are becoming mainstream. One example is the concept of the circular economy popularized by Bill McDonough, Janine Benyus, and others, that uses nature's conservation of materials as the ideal model for business. The idea has been around for over 20 years, but now with the help of the Ellen T. MacArthur Foundation and others, it's providing a theoretical foundation that companies can use to explore new business opportunities. One proof point of the growing interest is that in 2019, BlackRock, the largest investment company in the world, created a new mutual fund owning shares of companies focused on developing circular economy models for their businesses. While the circular economy is often used to describe material flows such as reuse and recycling, the most recycled material is water. Water's properties make it fundamental to most manufacturing processes. It's used as an ingredient, a coolant, a solvent, a means to carry other materials away, like it does when you flush the toilet. But there is no away for either the water or the waste it's carrying. What would a circular economy of human waste look like? A developed world model is close to home here in Milwaukee, where our local water and wastewater treatment systems deliver water to our homes and businesses, transport the waste, treat it to recover nutrients, and then return mostly clean water to its original source in Lake Michigan. We are all a living part of this cycle. Most of the water in my body right now likely came from Lake Michigan. But where and how water travels and how waste is handled varies widely around the world. I've had the opportunity to visit many communities that lacked centralized water and wastewater treatment. The first was as a UUCW brigadista in Nicaragua in 2010. We got firsthand experience with their circular water economy, eating food grown in their gardens with irrigation water from the local well, taking bucket showers, and yes, using the pit toilets. In less dense rural settings, nature provides enough water and wastewater treatment to maintain a balance. Composted waste from the latrines and from the animals is safely reused as fertilizer on farm fields. But in cities and surrounding areas where a growing majority of people live, this balanced model breaks down. I've seen the results in places such as India, where hundreds of millions of people still practice open defecation and entire communities suffer from disease, stunted growth of children, educational delays due to school absences, and violence against women and girls, all primarily due to lack of clean water and proper toilets. According to the World Health Organization, in 2019, 2 billion people worldwide lack access to proper toilets or latrines. What does it mean to, quote, affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people when such situations exist and are so widespread? Much like our larger situation with climate change, it's a problem of decision-making driven by conventional economics rather than a lack of technology. Governments, private businesses, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists are working to create sustainable business models that recycle water and repurpose waste in these communities. But it's a challenge. As with other businesses, properly accounting for financial and social externalities would be a huge step forward toward aligning water and sanitation economy with human dignity and progress. There is hope, but as Senator Gaylord Nelson, founder of Earth Day 50 years ago, said, the ultimate test of man's conscience may be his willingness to sacrifice something today for future generations whose words of thanks will not be heard. Mitigating climate change, providing safe water and sanitation for all, and finding a path to a truly just and sustainable future are our generation's burden and opportunity. Our choices, both big and small, all make a difference. Thank you. And now Jim's going to share a few words with us.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for that marvelous talk. So on this 50th anniversary of Earth Day, it's my big honor and privilege for me to get to speak with you about my love for the planet Earth, and especially for the water that is such a huge part of it. With a land area of only 29% and a water surface area of a whopping 71%, maybe we should be calling it planet water instead of planet Earth. My appreciation for the power of water began at a very young age. When I was 3 years old, my family relocated from our urban home in Dayton, Ohio, to rural southern Indiana. My parents had a house built for their family of 10 children. And for drinking water, we had a well dug in the front yard. And for wastewater, we had a septic system installed in the backyard. Both the well and the septic system were challenged in very short order as 3 more siblings joined the brood. Our well would run dry in the summer, and the septic system suffered from overloading and backups. In response, my parents trained us in an array of water use practices, like collecting the water we ran to warm our showers for use flushing toilets. I continue this practice today. Stockpiling gallon jugs of water for use when the well ran dry. Flushing the toilet only when really necessary. Composting instead of sending vegetables trimmings down the disposer. Never leaving the water running when brushing teeth. Showering with as little water as humanly possible. Turning off the water while soaping up, and no lingering after rinsing off. My father himself, to my knowledge, never stepped foot in our shower. Instead, his daily routine was a sponge bath. He would wash up with only a sink of water, a practice he said he perfected in the Army. They called it a helmet shower. He never asked us to follow that practice, but he continued it by himself for his entire life at home. Outside the house, we got good at rainwater harvesting to water our huge vegetable garden, collecting water from the downspouts in big, shallow galvanized steel tubs, protecting every drop by mulching the garden with grass clippings. And when the tubs of rainwater ran dry, hiking down the hill through the woods to an ephemeral stream that held a series of pools where, if you walked up and downstream far enough, you could always find enough water to bail out 2 gallons worth in 1-gallon paint cans and haul them back up the hill to water the many rows of growing vegetables. Water conservation and protection became ingrained in my core forever. My father decided to remedy these challenges with a solution. We would build a pond. The plan was to clear the heavily wooded valley behind our house, build a dam, and allow the stream I mentioned before to fill that valley. The project took 10 years, but once we were done, it was a dream come true. Though we still refer to it as the pond, it's more like a small lake, 5 acres in size, and the project grew in scope and size to incorporate water filtration, piping, and a pumping system to irrigate the garden and flush the first floor toilet. Of course, the pond was also marvelous for canoeing, swimming, fishing, and even ice skating in winter. So many of my fond memories of growing up are centered around that pond. It's no wonder I'm passionate about protecting our water environment. My study of engineering wasn't water-based centered at first, but it was natural that my life flowed in that direction. After being courted by oil and defense companies, I chose a job with a company that makes submersible pumps and mixers, and my course was charted. Working for this company has allowed me to expand my understanding of water issues. I learned that wastewater is not a waste, but a resource. Wastewater treatment plants across North America and the globe are converting to becoming water resource recovery facilities. They no longer try to call themselves wastewater treatment plants. They upgrade their processes to remove nutrients like phosphorus so it can be used as a fertilizer instead of being lost forever as a waste. Think of Milorganite production here in Milwaukee. I learned also about living in a large watershed and the importance of protecting the entire watershed and addressing diffuse pollution rather than only addressing point sources of pollution. In fact, our daughter was born during the cryptosporidium outbreak in Milwaukee in 1993. You may remember that local disaster, which was caused by diffuse pollution and sickened and killed many members of our community. I learned how to design water and wastewater treatment plants and how they were developed back in the early 1900s in response to waterborne disease outbreaks to prevent the loss of so many lives. Like Rob, I've also been fortunate to learn about the power of water in many other parts of the world and to discover the wide variety of challenges they face in their communities. For example, during my work with an organization called Water for People, building school bathrooms in rural India, I learned that there's a widespread lack of safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene education. I also learned that the facilities, the bathrooms we built, were essential for girls to attend school all month long, instead of having to stay home during their menstrual periods. Through our church's partnership with Bridges to Community, we know firsthand that the same kinds of challenges exist in Nicaragua and in the Dominican Republic. In Haiti, my wife Eileen worked with an organization that built pumps in rural villages to provide access to clean water for cooking and drinking. But at the instigation of their Haitian co-workers, the organization uses these pumps as a way to encourage the development of civic pride and responsibility. Just as my family developed our own simple strategies for dealing with water, with our water ecosystem, communities all over the world are struggling to figure out their own best practices for water management. And on that note, I would like to share with you some great ideas for you to make the world a better place. I just got to find the list. Give me a second. No. Here it is. Okay, found it. So there, we hope that our talk today has inspired you and given you some maybe some thoughts about, well, how can I make the world a better place? And what can you do for water? And so there are many actions you can take. And in honor of Earth Day, we've put a list together of ways you can take care of the water environment all around us. And we'll provide you with plenty of resources and ideas in next week's e-news. But we encourage you to take these top 5 actions right away. Number 1, no wipes down the pipes. How many of you have purchased these kind of products? Wet ones, wet wipes. They come in all kinds of packaging. So right now, with so many people at home due to the COVID-19 pandemic, so-called flushable wipes are causing a huge clogging problem for wastewater treatment plants. So please, don't flush anything except human and pet waste and toilet paper. Number 2, compromise, don't fertilize. If you have a lawn, minimize or eliminate the use of fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides. These chemicals eventually end up in our rivers and lakes and can cause many problems for our aquatic ecosystems. Number 3, pick up litter before it skitters. Stormwater runoff will carry litter into rivers and lakes unless it's picked up. And litter hurts the water ecosystem and plugs up treatment systems. So pick up litter whenever you have a chance. This is a great action for families to take together. Number 4, hydrate and meditate. Fill up a big glass of water and drink it with appreciation. Reflect on what a blessing water is. You might also visit a river, a pond, a lake, and take a moment to gaze upon it with gratitude. And finally, Number 5, make dinner a water winner. When you're thinking about what to have for dinner, consider the fact that the amount of water it takes to produce beef is 6 times the amount it takes to produce plant-based protein. So make your dinner a water winner by enjoying tofu, beans and rice, or other plant proteins. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you to both Jim and to Rob for your sharing your expertise and your stories. It is powerful testimony to our earth and also to the things that we can do ourselves right now. So if you look on the UUCW Facebook page, you'll see those top 5 actions with their snappy titles that Jim just read for you. And we will provide more resources next week. But for now, let us close this time together with words of benediction adapted from the Reverend Gary Kowalski. Our time here on earth is short. Around us swirl immensities of time and space, an infinite universe. Amid the panorama of creation, our hopes and cares may seem small, but we are not separate from the cosmos. We grow from it like the leaves on a tree. We are part of it like the waves are part of Lake Michigan. Our lives are a piece of the beauty and creativity of the whole. And so may we be filled with reverence and compassion for cloud and sun, animal and plant, neighbor, stranger and friend. May we be filled with reverence and compassion for all our kin, all beings who share this improbable and never to be repeated moment on our beautiful planet Earth. Shalom, blessed be, Ashe, and Amen.